Welcome back to the Rebuild the Construction Mindset podcast. This year, we're diving into education with our new series, Rebuild and Relearn, bringing you insights from the front lines of construction and beyond. From trade professionals to students and educators, we're uncovering what truly makes the industry tick.
If you're enjoying the podcast, watching it on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn, and wherever you listen to your podcast. Your support really helps us keep building and sharing these important stories. Share it with your friends, colleagues, anyone else curious about the construction industry and how we can make it better. Together, we can grow this amazing community. Thanks for listening, and let's jump into today's episode.
Welcome back to Rebuild the Construction Mindset podcast. Welcome to 2025. We're so excited for this year. We have a lot planned. We are going to kind of go over what we have planned for the year, and then we're going to go into our first episode. So we are excited to announce that we're going to have a Rebuild and Relearn series. This series is essentially going to be an educational series. It is going to be more geared towards people who are curious about the industry, and then to also kind of help the field understand what the office does and what some of our terminologies we use and what we do on the office side. So if you're in the field and you're like, I have no idea what my project manager does, I have no idea what the estimators do, we're going to try to help highlight some of those things so that it's a little easier for you guys to understand when there's some talk happening in the field, for you to understand what all that terminology means. So this kind of came about because Kelly and I have been talking a lot about our goals being education-based this year. We thought this series would be really cool because it would not only help people realize that they want to be in construction, whether it's in the trades or in the construction management side, but also to educate the people that are already in construction that maybe need a little refresher, or for people who don't understand other people's roles. So yeah, that was kind of our idea for Rebuild and Relearn. And Kelly, do you want to go over some of our other goals?
Yeah, we'll continue with our stories, some of the stories that we brought last year from the field, from executives. Some of the stories and interviews we are looking to bring on people from the framing and drywall industry, trades, steel erector trade, mechanical, and finishes, or like the finished carpentry trade. So we are looking to bring on some people to talk about that, along with back into the office, doing another panel. And Kelly, me, will remember to unmute whatever it is, wherever we're at. So doing another panel at the end of the year, bringing in some PMs, engineers, vendors, another owner of a company like we did with ABS. So we've got 20 episodes really lined out already for the year with who we want to talk to. Going to the education side, we've got professors, and we want to get with some kids that may be considering it for construction management or in trade school. So we've got some big goals, and we hope that you will join us as we go forward with everything. So very excited. Obviously, always reach out if you have some other ideas, because maybe they'll fit. We love it. Or reach out if you want to be on the podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and please subscribe, because that will make it easier for you guys to get updates whenever we post an episode, regardless of what platform you listen to. Subscribe on that platform, and yeah, just follow us on all the LinkedIn, Instagram, and yeah, it'll keep you updated on what we're doing. So, Sweet. Thanks, Kelly. We're gonna hop into our first Rebuild and Relearn episode. So this is very, very generic, broad overview of what is construction management. Because I know that we talk a lot about all the details and all the things that go into it. And I have a lot of friends that listen to the podcast that are in the industry, and they're like, I don't know what you guys are saying, but that's cool. So this is for all my friends who don't know what I do. Just kidding. But yeah, so we kind of wanted to go through what construction management is and why we think it's a great career choice. Obviously, it's not necessarily better than like a trade school or something, but if you're interested in the office side, this is kind of an overview of what it is. So just kind of start off, you don't have to go to school for construction management to be in construction or have a construction management career. You can, graduate with different degrees. Most construction management jobs do require a degree of sorts. It is rare to move into a construction management role without having a degree, unless, Kelly, I don't know if you've had other experiences there.
I have. I mean, you're coming up from the field. I know individuals that are project managers or CEOs or vice presidents, whatever, all of those higher up in the office, and they've built from the field. Guys that have a bunch of arm tattoos and you would think they'll never get anywhere higher than being a journeyman out there, but they've obviously made it past, and they do not have college degrees. So you can get there without the piece of paper. It's just a different route. So understanding what route may work best for you is probably the most important thing. Do you like to work with your hands? Because you probably want to start with working out in trades and finding something you like doing there. Or if you've got the availability and you think the management side, starting off there would be great, that's when you look at construction management schools in your area.
Yeah, and construction management isn't just one role. Just because you have a construction management degree doesn't mean you're going to go directly into a project management role. There are multiple different roles. Kelly and I are going to have a separate episode going more in depth of what different avenues and what different paths you can take. But, for the sake of this conversation, we're going to use project management kind of as like a broad overview of what it really is, just because it is the most common role. But Kelly actually talked to a project engineer and asked him what his thoughts were on, what he thought, or I guess what he would want to know what construction management is before he was actually in the industry. And it sounds like the biggest thing is just understanding, I guess, how the role plays and how the relationships play out in the field and on the project. So for starters, if you're a project manager for a general contractor, one of the main things that you do on a daily basis is building relationships with your trade partners. So you are directly contracted with the owner. So for example, if you're building a school, you would contract with that school district, and then they're going to essentially have an architect. This is a very traditional style method, but they're going to have an architect who they are going to contract with separately. And then they're going to basically go out to bid, essentially is what it's called, where they're going to basically take those sets of drawings, and a bunch of different general contractors are going to bid on the job to win the project. And then once a contractor is awarded, they're then going to do the same thing where they're going to go ahead and bid out the work to the trade partners. And that's kind of like the most traditional route. There's a lot of different types of routes to get there, but that's essentially the dynamic that is constructed on a project. So basically, the trade partner's customer is a general contractor. The general contractor's customer is the owner, and then the architect's customer is also the owner. So that's kind of the way that dynamic works.
Yeah, it's definitely the feedback I got from that project engineer, who's only about a yearish out of college. The job is a lot more admin based than what you really think. Also, there's a lot more people management. There's a lot more conversations and collaboration and problem solving with people than you really learn when you're at school. Even when we think about trade school, if you go from being from the field to a foreman, that step, there's a lot more people management and personality management than there really is just making sure something is built right. And so that was one of his things. It's like, there's a lot more contract stuff, how to write a really good RFI. How are we managing the costs? It's obviously you learn that once you're out there, but it's not something he felt that he fully got. And we want to make sure people are aware there's more to it. It's like a mixture of construction management and people management, because you're dealing with people every single day, different people, different personalities, different age ranges. So you really have to figure out how's the best way to communicate with these people from the client side and then trade partner side. There's so much that I think you just need a whole psychology class, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. But there's a lot more than I know when I was in college, we were required to take calculus, the high level calculus, like Calc 1 or 2. And I will tell you, to this day, we're almost 20 years, I have never used calculus in the industry. So really pisses me off when it's still there, because I'm like, what's the point?
Yeah.
I understand some of the classes like surveying and some of these other things. You understand what's happening on a construction site, but there's definitely a lot more of that professional skills, trying to change that from saying soft skills, but to professional skills that you really need to start honing in and working on from day one on a job site.
Right. Yeah. And I think a misconception a lot of the time, I remember when I graduated, everyone thought that I was going to be physically out there every single day, with a hammer. And I'm like, I don't really know how you got that from me getting a degree. I don't know what I would have done, me little old me out there.
And
So
there's all size people out there.
yeah, I know. But I think it was funny because I used an analogy. I said, okay, think of it this way. You're making a sandwich, right? And you're in a restaurant making a sandwich for a customer who's going to eat the sandwich. That customer who's going to eat the sandwich is the owner. The sandwich itself is being built, right? So the chef is the general contractor, I guess. And then, that sandwich has to have what type of cheese, what type of meat, what type of bread. The person who's creating the menu, that's the architect. So that's kind of the analogy I used. And I said, okay, I'm the chef, essentially. I'm the one who's reading the menu and making sure that the way that I'm building the sandwich is to the specifications of the sandwich that I'm then going to feed this owner, which is the customer. So like that was kind of like my analogy for construction, because it kind of is.
That's a drawing, so we could have like pointed all this out. That's for the people that are watching on like YouTube or even on the video for Spotify. We should have a drawing for them.
Seriously. But then the trade partner is the one, like, you'll have someone who just manages the bread. So they're just stacking the bread. Someone who just manages the cheese. Someone who just manages the meat. And the general contractor is the one, the sous chef or the chef saying, no, make sure you're putting that here. Make sure, making sure that everything that they're doing is to the specifications and to like, and it's happening in order. It's happening within the budget. It's happening, within the schedule. So that's kind of like the management side, is managing the sandwich to make sure it's built correctly and it's built on time, so it's not cold by the time it gets to the owner.
That's a really good analogy of explaining that. First time I've ever heard it, but I don't hate it. Maybe we'll just call this episode Building a Sandwich.
Building a sandwich. Yes, absolutely.
Building a sandwich. But I like it. Yeah. That's a very, you'd like use Subway or Chipotle. We could use
exactly.
as a line going down. But it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I know it, and it's also, colleges are usually pushing, I wouldn't say colleges are pushing it, but it's very well known that, GCs are going to be hiring more typically from the colleges. It's really set up for that type of a system. I know when I was in college, we learned, how to read MEP drawings, which, that was just one class for half a semester. Definitely could have probably used more, but it starts. So there are, still some classes that totally make sense in there. They do focus on, overall kind of being a GC, but it's very similar if you go into the trade partner side, which I started with, and I know, Jenna, you did too, that you're just managing maybe smaller amounts of people, where I think that's the other thing from a trade partner. I'm only talking to one PM, maybe one or two PEs, depending on what general contractor we're talking about, because some have more PEs or field engineers than others. So I have a smaller group of people that I may be communicating with. Where on the GC side, usually the PMs and the PEs and the supers, they may be overseeing multiple trade partners. So they're constantly getting impact in conversation from the framing company, the concrete guys, the steel guys, whatever. So you're constantly getting information from multiple trade partners. And I think that's something that the more you're in it, the more you're aware, but it's could be a little like, whoa, when you first get into it. That's why a lot of colleges push internships, so that you fully understand what you're getting into. So highly 100% recommend it. Some schools, it's not required, but it's recommended. I know other schools that fully not recommend, make you do it. And there's like homework that you have to provide. I think, Jenna, that's your school, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So it's something that it's very similar. It's just like, how many people are you having to meet? How many people do you have to deal with on a day-to-day? And then from the trade partner side, you may be working on 3 or 4 or 5 different projects, depending on the company size and where you're at. I started in Las Vegas. I started on one project, so it worked out. But as I moved up to being more of a PM, I was working on multiple projects, where that's less typical from the general contractor side. So really, the time management is a really big thing of understanding how to work on multiple things at the same time and dealing with different types of work at the same time. So I think that's just stuff that, again, you don't really know until you're out there, and that's why we're here today.
Yeah. Well, and I think, and this is just coming from being on both sides, the general contractor side and the trade side. People always ask me, like, why did you choose the trade side opposed to the general contractor side? And I think my answer to that is I feel like the trade side is a lot more detail oriented. Like, you have to know the nitty gritty down to like the type of screw that you're using on the project. Whereas the general contractor side is big picture, right? Like, they're managing the big picture. Obviously, there's a lot of details that go into what they do, but they couldn't be so detail oriented or else they would be extremely overwhelmed. Like, if they were trying to micromanage all the trades, which I know in some cases might be needed because there's certain trades that need a little bit more of that kind of love and that little babysitting. Overall, if you're basically like debating if you're going to go the trade or the general contractor route, think about that. Think about your personality. Think about, like, do you like to be solely in the details and like very, very down to like literally down to the finish and everything on the project? Or are you more like, you like to manage big scopes? You like to like see the big picture, see the broad scale. So think about that when you are deciding, if you do end up going into, construction management and you're deciding what route to take. That was something that was super helpful for me when I did decide to go the trade route, was because of that reason. So I know we're going to go in a little more in depth on a later episode into like what roles specifically and like what the roles entail. But, with a construction management degree, you could go multiple different roles. So in the pre-construction is what it's called. It's basically where you're chasing the project, you're trying to win the project, whether you're a general contractor or a trade partner. You can be an estimator, business development, which is like the sales side, purchasing. I mean, there's different roles there. And then from pre-con, then rolls into operations, which is then the project manager, the superintendent. Most people start out as project engineers, is what they're called, before they move into a project management role. Some companies call it different things, but project engineers, pretty like PE is pretty like a standard term, even though it's like professional engineers, so it's kind of confusing. We're not engineers.
And you're not doing any engineering when it comes back down to it. It has nothing. I've had that people ask me when I was a PE. It's like, oh, you're an engineer? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I did not go to engineering school. There are some people that when I've met some people that are now PEs, project engineers, and they did go to school for civil engineering or some type of like engineering, but they've gone the management route for construction management rather than going into the engineering. But in general, it's not engineering. We are not doing math like engineering math. We're doing like algebra, maybe some geometry, pluses and minuses, pretty basic math.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that's like kind of the operation side, and then you've got field engineers who can turn into superintendents. It kind of depends on the company you would go to, but there are different types of titles. And then there's things outside of all of that, which, kind of like touch on like specialties. So you could do safety, or you could be a safety manager, a quality manager. You can specify, or you could specialize in like lean, which is what Kelly does. What is your title?
Lean manager.
Yeah. So like, I mean, there's a lot of different routes and avenues you can go. That's not just the standard stuff that they talk about in school. So keep that in mind if you are looking, you like construction and you like being able to be a part of a project like that, but you don't really want to be a part of the project per se. You want to be kind of on the outskirts or be on multiple projects. There are other avenues you can go down. So yeah, I mean, those are some, I guess, basic roles that you can look at, going to. And not only that, but like, you can try all of them. Like, I've been in a couple of different roles, and it's actually made me a better project manager now than if I would have just stuck with just being a PE and moving my way up to PM. Like, I definitely feel like I've had a lot more benefits from trying different roles. And a lot of companies will actually like require it. So there's some companies where you have to go through and be a field engineer and then a PE and then this. They basically require certain like times. It could be 3 months, but they require you to be in those roles just so you get a good taste for it all.
Yeah, I think some companies do like a rotation. They expect like some PEs to hit rotations, and it may be you're part of your onboarding when you first are hired, or it could be, hey, we're slowing down on this project. You haven't sat in estimating and done pre-con since you've been here, so you're going to go do that rotation. So you're just at least learning more about the overall process of how we actually build, how we get things done, basically behind the scenes, beyond what you see every day out on the job site, right? So I think that's really beneficial just to know the parts and pieces. And again, it helps you be better at whatever job you end up in. And I've known multiple people that have left being, on the ops side and they go work for a vendor who's supplying the material or go work for a technology company. So to like help better the industry. And so we're working on, creating some better systems or pieces of equipment. So there's a lot of different routes. So just always keep it open. Maybe schools are better at teaching that stuff now. Obviously, I haven't been there in a while, but it definitely wasn't a thing. It was just you were kind of just assumed you're going to the GC route and that's what you do. And you'll figure it out once you get there. So it's just one of those things to learn more. And again, if you're somebody from the trades or want to start in that trades, that doesn't limit you. I think we've talked about that a couple of times with some of our other interviews from last year. It doesn't limit you. You can do as much as you want to do. And I think that's a big thing. The industry has a lot to offer. And I don't think we as an industry do well sharing that and showing that. And we need to do better. So that's where we're starting today.
I do want to say, I want to encourage women who are either been a little interested or have no idea what construction is and came and stumbled upon this podcast to look into getting into the industry. I think there's this misconception that it's very dirty and that it's not a place for women. And, being a woman in construction, I say it's the polar opposite of that. I mean, I think it's evolved a lot, but also I think women have such like a good place in the industry. We have different perspectives. Like there's just a lot that you can do. And you can be, in the office. If you don't want to be out in the job site, but you still want to be a part of it, there's a lot of roles in the office for that. But yeah, I highly, highly, highly recommend construction management as a career path for anyone, but especially women.
If we circle it all back, your construction management, you are working on planning the job, outlining objectives, budgets, resources. You're talking with the owner, aligning on what's the most important thing for them, what is key for them. You're managing money. You're managing probably the most money you've ever had to manage. And it's super weird at some points to be like, I'm managing $30 million or $300 million. But it's a big thing. And you really got to treat it like it's your money. You're managing resources and across so many levels. I think that's a really big thing. I say it again, is just your people management is really key. So finding ways to start building on that and learning now is really critical. And then tying in, you're looking at potential risks that could affect your schedule, your budgets, quality, safety. It's just, there's so many things. So it's a lot deeper than I think most people think construction is. I'm out on site, like you said, Jenna, and I'm out there like doing something. I'm managing the construction. There's much more to it. And back to the PE before, there's much more admin aspect to it. So get used to a computer.
If you are really interested in learning what construction management is, there's so many resources and so many articles and things online too. So, if you're interested, just hop on there. We can probably link some things in our show notes as well, just to help you find some of those items. And yeah, I think if you guys want to make sandwiches, this is the right place for it.
That's the name of the episode. Making sandwiches. Saying it again.
Well, thanks everyone for listening. If you are interested in more of these small educational podcasts, please listen to the Rebuild and Relearn podcast. We're going to have it in the title of all our podcasts, so you can click on it right away. And yeah, we'll see you on the next one.